West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The Belarusian Olympian who rejected orders to return home is now safe in Poland. Sprinter Krystyna Tymanovskaya arrived in Warsaw Wednesday. Belarusian officials tried to force her to leave the Olympics last weekend after she criticized team coaches. But after her family warned it wasn't safe to return, she asked for political asylum while at the Tokyo airport. Poland then offered Tymanovskaya and her husband humanitarian visas. Back in authoritarian Belarus, troubling evidence is emerging of what may be a prison camp for political dissidents. It was found deep in the forest. Nick Payton-Walsh is live in London with this exclusive report. Nick, take us through what you found.
Certainly the fate of athlete Tymanovskaya has shone a harsh light on repression that's been happening inside Belarus for well over a year now, many would say actually decades. But these new findings, video and witness statements we've received, appear to show an extreme harshening of Belarusian state preparations to potentially hold political prisoners further down the line in protests that may happen in the months ahead. Here's what we saw.
A chilling sight, not from the last century, but last month. A possible prison camp built inside Belarus for political prisoners. CNN obtained this footage of what witnesses said looked like a newly refurbished camp about an hour's drive from the capital, Minsk. A new sign saying, "Forbidden border and entry." A 3-layer fence, electrified, they said. New moving surveillance cameras, bars and reflective screens on the windows of newly rebuilt barracks. No prisoners yet, what looked like a soldier inside, and regular military patrols who told our witnesses outside to leave. One local talked to them anonymously. "My friend Sasha, a builder, told me they've refurbished this place," he said. "There are 3 levels of barbed wire and it's electrified. I was picking mushrooms here when a military man came up to me and said I can't walk here." The buildings sit on the vast site of a former Soviet missile storage facility surrounded by forest. The repairs came not long after defecting police officers released secret recordings of senior police discussing the need for prison camps at several sites.
The assignment? To develop and build a camp, but not for prisoners of war or even the interned, but a camp for the especially sharp-hooved, for resettlement, and surround it with barbed wire along the perimeter.
Unsurprisingly, CNN hasn't gained access to the interior of the site, so we can't definitively say that it is intended for use as a prison camp, but a Western intelligence official I spoke to said that use was, quote, possible, although they didn't have direct evidence. In the current climate, it's tough to imagine what else the camp could be for. Opposition leaders fear its possible use by President Alexander Lukashenko's forces during future protests.
It's not surprising that he's trying to build something like a regular prison camp, because the new wave of protest will come up anyway. It can be triggered by his statement, it can be triggered by economic situation, but it will come. And he understands, and he also wants to be prepared more than last year in 2020. So this is why I will not be surprised if such camps are being built.
Belarusian officials declined to comment and have called the recording about camps fake news when it was released, saying they followed the law. These images emerge after a weeks-long crackdown against remaining independent media inside Belarus and dozens of arrests. Inside Belarus, the protest movement's been persecuted so hard it now holds remote flash mob demonstrations like these, filmed by drones. But some of it is finding ways to hit back, CNN has learned. These are railway saboteurs, apparently in action. They say their operations, the details of which we aren't disclosing, just trigger alarms that stop trains on the tracks, risking nobody's safety and causing traffic to slow down, they say. We spoke to one organiser. When our skies are blocked, he said, we should block the land as well. The main goal is to cause economic damage to the regime because all the delays cause them to pay huge fines. This action was carried out, they said, on a key route from Russia to the European Union. CNN can't independently confirm it was effective. If there is an impact on rail traffic, it could have great significance outside of Belarus and here, Lithuania, because so many goods from the east rely on this network to get to Europe. Signs both sides could be adopting new, harsher tactics, and what may await fresh protests as the screws tighten.
So you can see really there the frankly terrifying climate inside of Belarus. You have to ask yourself, what is that facility we found in the forest if it's not intended at some point to house prisoners? The horrifying climate inside Belarus that certainly would have been in the mind of Olympic athlete Kristina Timanovskaya when she told me her grandmother said she'd been criticised on state television for her critical remarks about the Olympic team there, causing her to seek asylum in Poland. She is supposed to talk later on today from Poland, but I think it's the clumsy, threatening behaviour of the Lukashenko regime towards her that has certainly shone a spotlight on their behaviour internally. But remember too, also, I think possibly cast a greater pall of fear over that at large Belarusian diaspora forced to leave the country because of the repression and possibly the feeling that Minsk, Belarus feels increasingly confident globally about how far it can throw its repressive tactics.
It is Thursday, the 5th of August of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, we can almost hear the clanging of the prison doors, right? Can we hear them? We hope we can, because there's a few people that need to go to jail, and I don't just mean a missing $5,800 bottle of whiskey illegally given as a gift. Did you know that government officials cannot accept a gift from a foreign nation or even a foreign person in excess of $300 and some odd? And Mike and Susan have no idea where this bottle of whiskey went. Apparently Japan gave them a $5,800 bottle of whiskey. I think what happened is that Mike and Susan, the Pompeos, drank $300 worth at each sitting until the bottle was gone, so they would be under the allotted maximum for gifts. So it's okay. A lot of other people are thinking that maybe the bottle was stolen. Give me a break. The Pompeos drank it and they're lying that they don't know where it went. They know exactly where it went. Or maybe they say they don't know where it is because, it has passed through their system and it's somewhere in the sewage area. They can't pinpoint it. It's over there. So it may not be the actual insurrection that the scofflaws get charged with and sent to jail. It might be something as simple as a $5,800 bottle of whiskey. or taxes. Yeah, Trump does not want anyone to see his taxes. Why is that? He kept promising and promising, oh yeah, well, I'm under audit, but as soon as they're not under audit, you can see him. Oh, I will be releasing my taxes during Infrastructure Week. For 4 years, his taxes were going to be released during Infrastructure Week, and we never had an Infrastructure Week. Maybe that's why. They were going to have it, but Trump kept saying, it'll be with the Infrastructure Week, Bill. He never said that, but we're making a joke, and it seems plausible. It does. So what else? Oh, yeah, we got Santa Monica Goebbels. Yeah, Stephen Miller. He's out making the rounds, giving speeches at Nazi organizations. Well, they call them conservative right-wing groups, but there's not a conservative in America anymore. You're a Nazi. Oh, I don't know. Maybe the Lincoln Project people can continue to call themselves conservatives. But I still don't trust them, just so you know. Yeah, so the conservative movement pretty much has been destroyed by Trump and his Nazis. Look at that card that Trump is trying to pass out. He's trying to grift his people with a $50 card. Oh, yeah, buy this $50 card to prove you're a patriot to the cause. And they even have the Nazi Iron Eagle as one of the choices. You get to vote on 4 designs of the card. They all look like Nazi stuff. Blood red. Yeah. You. Deutsche Mark this. Uh-huh. So $50. Yeah, so he's going to get some money off of his sycophants. Jim Jones did a very similar thing, I should let you know. So it's not just Hitler and Donald Trump. There's a few other types that are, up there in terms of psychopathic leadership. Sociopaths, even. Okay, so, you get your Trump card, and what does that mean? Oh, you can go into any place that you want to without a mask, unvaccinated, and you have the right to just harass anybody who might look like a liberal because you're a Stormtrooper brown shirt now, and you have the card to prove it. $50. Okay, well, that's direct marketing. God. I guess I'm just a terrible businessman, because if I ever considered that kind of stuff, I would dismiss it out of hand for being such a ridiculously immoral act. Apparently, you can't have morality and be in business while successful, which is gauged by becoming a media empire. Trump is a media empire. Well, he had some help from that Burnett guy. I'd like to see that fellow dragged in front of these committees looking at January 6th. Just to, get a little bit of understanding about how it started. A lot of people think it started with The Apprentice. I will still argue it started much longer than that. I would suggest that it happened around the time that Trump was dating Ivana. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget, Ivana's dad was KGB. And I'm going to keep beating this dead horse over and over and over until this guy's in jail. Because we used to sit around on our survival hikes up in Yosemite. Yeah, we used to take 10, 15-day survival hikes. Started off going around 150-mile loops. And we wouldn't take any food. Well, I would cheat. I would bring some rice. One time I even brought canned food. Canned beans. What an idiot. It's all weight. Anyway, we would go on these big survival hikes for 10 days to 2 weeks. And go on these giant loops. Our favorite spot was the Clark Range. And hike up to Lake Ostrander and go from there. And so we used to speak about Trump back then on our survival hikes. And we actually were pretty darn convinced that he was being groomed by the Soviet Union to be a spy. Because what better thing to bring down America than to, get one of these capitalists who have no morality, no sense of being, no sense of place. no loyalty to something larger than themselves. You know, sort of like what Khrushchev or somebody in the Soviet Union was attributed with saying, that when he comes to grind America under the iron heel of their blue boot, that you can rest assured that the capitalist will sell them the rope that they hang the capitalists with. And Donald Trump is that guy. But first he's got to do some work and disrupt the ideals of what makes us American. And it's not just the designated hitter. The designated hitter came about in the mid-'60s. It was completely Russian active measures. It's undeniable. Okay, it is deniable. But that PEEPS, I always thought PEEPS was a Russian active measure to destroy the ideals of America. And certainly pumpkin spice. What is this idea for a preponderance of pumpkin spice everywhere? Sounds like Russian active measures to me. I stay clear. But all joking aside, we were fairly convinced, in a joking way, in the beginning, that Donald Trump was working for the other side. He just looked like he was a selfish capitalist. Well, actually, he not only looks it, he is. But he's also the rope that we are going to be hung with. And Vladimir Putin, working in the KGB, has a long memory. They're not intent on bringing back communism or socialism. They are mobsters, and now they have the force of their spy agency behind them. Donald Trump said all along, you know, how he's successful is that if someone comes for him, he goes back at them 10 times as hard. That's how he finds satisfaction, is hurting other people harder than they thought they could hurt him. All right. And he's working for the other side. The evidence is right before us. We even had a violent coup attempt while the vote was being certified. Destroy everything that is an ideal in America, and then you can supplant that with something else. And we have an idea what that something else is, and I got to tell you, there's no baseball in Russia. Okay? All right. Got that off my chest, whatever it was. What's on the rest of the menu here? As we start off in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, well, at the top, investigative news video appears to show what I call gulags that are being built in Belarus to hold political prisoners, dissenters of Alexander Lukashenko. I don't blame that Belarusian sprinter for deciding she doesn't want to go back, especially after her family said, they're already talking bad about you on the TV. Don't come back. She's in Poland. I hope Poland upholds their end of the bargain. We can only hope. On the rest of the menu, amid the ongoing controversy, the Oregon State Employee Pension Fund is examining its investment in the equity firm behind the Pegasus hacking spyware. Turns out the Oregon Pension Fund is probably the largest investor of this equity fund. Facebook shut down the accounts of 2 New York University researchers investigating misinformation spread through political ads on the social network. And the Biden administration will require border agents to be outfitted with body cameras in a major oversight move. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Russian news outlet Open Media, long critical of Vladimir Putin, has been blocked by the state media watchdog. And Brazil's Bolsonaro raged against a Supreme Court investigation into his conduct and threatened to respond outside the limits of the Constitution. Seems to be a virus going around. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, right there by the social media scroll. And Kelly Lincoln monitors that chat room, so thank you, Kelly, for doing so. If you would then look across the page to the left on our homepage at netrootsradio.com, across the page from that chat room link, you will hopefully notice the link to our Patreon page. And I'm going to make an even more vociferous appeal for funds. The bills keep going up. Our internet service provider has once again increased the monthly bill, and they're actually floating this idea that we're going to get throttled here, which I had hoped so much that would have been illegal, but they don't care. So to be able to continue flying under the radar, we need to continue paying our bills. And when I say flying under the radar, getting away with what we get away with here in this resistance packet, or packet of resistance. We've been doing this for 10 years, and we take this civic duty very seriously. Now, if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds to us once a month, we then pool those resources with our own that we pull out of our own wallets. And then we pay our bills. And then we fly under the radar, and we continue this resistance against this hostile takeover of the United States of America. We will not allow it to happen. But to be able to continue doing so, we need more of you helping us. And I know times are tough, but if you're able to, your help would be very much appreciated. Like I said, times are tough, and if you can. So thank you. We'll continue doing what we do here, but I guess we just have to say we need some help. We do. So thank you for helping us. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of me at Justice Putnam on Twitter, and I would suggest that you go ahead and follow me there, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. And rather than going on Daily Codes and trying to find me there, if you found me on Twitter, you can just link to the show notes and links diary, which is a very integral part to each show, because that's where the actual reportage is. And so, like I said, it's very important. So follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. You can also follow the show on Twitter at CookbookWest. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, sometimes YouTube, and iTunes, and really wherever podcasts can be found. Yeah, YouTube. I don't know. You have to balance out taking down the Nazi propaganda, the anti-COVID, of course anti-COVID, the COVID denial, and the anti-vaxxers. They seem to have pretty much free reign, even though YouTube's saying, well, we're taking them down. So to add balance, they have to go after people like us. I don't know why, but they are. Even when you use actual YouTube videos that YouTube has on there that seems to not be flagged or taken down, and they're like saying, oh, well, that content violates our terms of use when I use it in this show. Oh, okay. They called it medical misinformation from the CDC. Scientific American. All right. Sounds to me like the right-wingers and the anti-vaxxers and the Russian trolls are gaming the algorithm on YouTube. Sounds like it. Okay, enough of that. You know, Facebook used to be the good foil. Now we have to go after YouTube also? Well, a lot of people were going after YouTube a lot sooner than this. Heck, I think David Pakman had some issues with YouTube several years ago. Might still. Might. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy because, save room. We still have an amuse-bouche or two back there at the chef's table. So, out of the Associated Press, Andrew Zelsky penned this piece. The future ownership of an Israeli spyware company whose product has been used to hack into the cell phones of journalists, human rights workers, and possibly even heads of state is up in the air. Major investors in a private equity firm that has majority ownership of NSO Group, the maker of the Pegasus spyware, are in discussions about what action to take. The Oregon State Employee Pension Fund is one of the largest investors, if not the largest, having committed $233 million to Novopina Capital, the private equity firm, in 2017. Novopina Capital has been saddled with both an internal dispute among its founding partners and an explosive report showing NSO Group's spyware has been widely misused around the globe. Oregon State Treasury spokeswoman Rachel Ray told the AP in an email yesterday, Wednesday, the department is getting involved. State officials previously said investors have limited say in private equity investments once they are completed. I can confirm that, consistent with our fiduciary duties to Oregon beneficiaries and along with other limited partners, the Oregon State Treasury is involved in discussions related to our investment in Novopina, Ray said yesterday, Wednesday. The development comes amid a serious disagreement among the three co-founders of London-based Novopina Capital that, according to press reports from Britain, resulted in investors moving to strip control of the fund after concluding that relations between the three had deteriorated so much they could no longer work together. Sky News reported the dispute was about future deployment of Novopina's $1.18 million fund. I actually think that should be billion. Okay, $1 billion fund. On top of that internal strife, an investigation published in July by the global media consortium, Forbidden Stories, showed that at least 180 journalists around the world had been selected as targets by clients of NSO Group. In one case, highlighted by The Guardian, Mexican reporter Cecilio Pinedo Birto was assassinated in 2017, a few weeks after his cell phone number appeared on a leaked list of more than 50,000 cell phone numbers. French President Emmanuel Macron is one of several world leaders who may have been targeted using the spyware that is capable of checking a cell phone's emails and other data and turning on its microphone and cameras. NSO Group denied that it has ever maintained a list of potential past or existing targets. In a separate statement, it called the Forbidden Stories report full of wrong assumptions and uncorroborated theories. The company insists it only sells to vetted government agencies for use against terrorists and major criminals, and that it has no visibility into customers' data. Critics have provided evidence that NSO directly manages the high-tech spying. Oregon State Treasurer Tobias Reed, who serves as the state's chief investment officer, is following and is concerned about the reporting surrounding Novopina and the NSO Group, Ray said. Ray said she cannot get into specifics about the discussions among Novopina's investors because of confidentiality restrictions and Oregon's obligation as a limited partner. And Oregon was Novalpina's first major investor. Stephen Peel and Stefan Kowski, two founding Novalpina Capital Partners, showed up at Oregon's Treasury offices in the Portland suburb of Tigard in November of 2017 to make a pitch to the Oregon Investment Council, which oversees the state's $90 billion pension fund. Think about that. We'll go to a state agency with a retirement fund, just like the mob did, and siphon off that money to commit crimes. Okay, just saying. The Oregon Investment Council unanimously approved a $233 million commitment. It has so far provided to fund $65.7 million, according to the most recent stats. In November, Novalpina Capital and the founders of NSO Group acquired a majority stake in NSO Group from another private equity firm, Francisco Partners, that the Oregon Pension Fund had previously invested in. Novalpina's largest investors are now considering picking Berkeley Research Group to replace Novalpina. The Financial Times reported that. If appointed, the California-based global consulting firm would be giving a mandate to return investors' money by selling the three companies Novalpina owns, including NSO, for the highest possible price. Berkeley Research Group did not respond to a request for comment. The group's website says it helps leading organizations advance in three key areas: disputes and investigations, corporate finance, and performance improvement. Barbara Ortate of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Facebook has shut down the personal accounts of a pair of New York University researchers and shuttered their investigation into misinformation spread through political ads on the social network. Facebook says the researchers violated its terms of service and were involved in unauthorized data collection from its massive network. The academics, however, say the company is attempting to exert control on research that paints it in a negative light. The NYU researchers with the Ad Observatory Project had for several years been looking into Facebook's ad library, where searches can be done on advertisements running across Facebook's products. The access was used to, quote, uncover systemic flaws in the Facebook ad library, to identify misinformation in political ads, including many sowing distrust in our electoral system, and to study Facebook's apparent amplification of partisan misinformation, end quote, said Laura Edelson, the lead researcher behind NYU Cybersecurity for Democracy, in a statement. Facebook's actions against the NYU project also cut off other researchers and journalists who got access to Facebook data through the project, Edelson said. The researchers offered Facebook users a web browser plugin tool that let them volunteer their data showing how the social network targets political ads. But Facebook said the browser extension was programmed to evade its detection systems and vacuum up user data, creating privacy concerns. Really? In a blog post late Tuesday, Facebook said it takes unauthorized data scraping seriously, and when we find instances of scraping, we investigate and take action to protect our platform. Facebook sent a cease and desist letter to Edelson and another researcher, Damon McCoy, in October, but did not shut down their accounts until Tuesday, hours after Edelson informed the platform that she and McCoy were studying the spread of disinformation on the platform about the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Mike Clark, Facebook product management director, wrote in the blog post that the Menlo Park, California company welcomes research that holds it accountable but does not compromise the security of the platform or users' privacy. Now, what do they mean by that? The privacy of Nazis? The privacy of those colluding within the White House on January 6th? While the Ad Observatory project may be well-intentioned, the ongoing and continued violations of protections against scraping cannot be ignored and should be remediated, he wrote. At least 2 Democratic senators expressed concerns about Facebook's move. Mark Warner of Virginia said tech platforms should work with and better empower independent researchers, but instead the company has seemingly done the opposite. Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota said she was troubled by Facebook cutting off researcher access to political advertising data, which has shown that the company continues to sell millions of dollars worth of political ads without proper disclosures. Facebook says it makes information on political ads available through its ad library and provides privacy-protected data sets to researchers through other means. Brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. The United States will require thousands of border agents to wear body cameras, according to 3 officials and government documents, a major operational change that could increase oversight of agents and also help capture criminal activity. The cameras are expected to be rolled out in parts of Texas and New Mexico during the summer and expanded in the fall and winter to Arizona, California, and Texas's busy Rio Grande Valley, which all border Mexico, according to a recent government assessment of how the devices could impact privacy. Agents in Vermont along the U.S. border with Canada will also be equipped with cameras, the assessment said. U.S. border authorities plan to deploy a total of 7,500 body-worn cameras, with 6,000 in the field by the end of the year. Pro-immigrant activists will likely welcome the increased oversight that cameras could bring to an agency some have criticized for excessive use of force and institutional racism, but a union for Border Patrol agents also supports cameras, saying they could assist criminal investigations and help show that agents act professionally. The ACLU and other groups have called on Border Patrol agents to use the cameras to improve accountability in the wake of several high-profile fatal shootings by law enforcement over the past decade. Brandon Judd, president of the National Border Patrol Council, stressed that agents should have access to the footage, including when an agent is accused of wrongdoing. Border Patrol's parent agency, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, is the largest law enforcement agency in the U.S., which presents a unique challenge for video footage collection and storage. Recordings of illegal activity, use of force, or agent misconduct could be used as evidence in investigations or prosecutions, the privacy assessment said. The cameras could offer new insight into the policing of the southern border, where migrant arrests have risen to 20-year highs in recent months, and encounters sometimes take place in remote areas. In cases where footage could be used as evidence in a criminal case, it could be retained for up to 75 years. Footage that does not have value as evidence would be destroyed within 180 days. Oh, no malfeasance would occur with that. After a bipartisan group of lawmakers spearheaded efforts to secure funding for body cams, CBP awarded a total of about $21 million to Axon Enterprises, Inc. For body cameras and to connect the cameras to a cloud-based storage system. The devices are the size of a deck of playing cards and will be affixed to the front of agents' uniforms. Do they turn them on automatically, or do the agents have to turn them on? Huh? Axon declined to comment on the rollout. CBP conducted a small pilot of body cameras in 2015, but ultimately opted not to deploy them then. An agency assessment at the time said the cameras would likely reduce the use of physical force on the job, but they cited the costs and agent morale as the reason not to do it. Okay. Body cameras have become more commonplace since the 2015 effort. The DOJ said in June that its agents would be required to wear cameras when serving search and arrest warrants. Well, good. Let's get to our break now, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, all you have to say is M. Night Shyamalan before critics take sides. Is it The Sixth Sense or is it The Last Airbender? Well, no one will accuse his new film, Old, of not having an enticing premise. A group of tropical vacationers find themselves trapped on a beach where time is accelerated, leading to children becoming adults over the course of hours, and adults, especially those with underlying medical conditions, succumbing to their maladies. The key that unlocks all is planted early and sustained, maybe a bit overwhelmed, and Shyamalan does a decent job of slowly ramping up the weird. But problems start when he gets into the examination of the human condition part of the proceedings, which, as fans of The Twilight Zone can attest, is where many of its episodes turn to sap. The standard was lower there, of course, because they had 22 minutes to work with and no budget. Here, though, we get an especially clunky script that attempts to deal with racial paranoia. By the way, who thought up the name of the rapper on the beach, mid-sized sedan? Then we have a newly adolescent boy and girl discovering sexual feelings, which, if done right, can be touching. See Moonrise Kingdom, or in another kind of movie, hilarious. Here, though, it's just cringeworthy. And when we see a vain, middle-aged female character losing her looks, we're almost to skit territory. There's credible cinematography here. It's a scenic locale in the DR, but the shooting with weird cropping and angles seems designed solely to amp up the strange, which unfortunately starts to seem necessary. Standard comeuppance awaits at the terminus of Old, while a seemingly important issue is left to the side. There's two adults who were little kids the day before. Uh-oh, he's not thinking sequel. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Songbirds can migrate for thousands of miles across the globe, and they have a lot of tools to help them find their way.
They can use the stars, they can use the sun, they can use smell, they can use landmarks, they can use more or less anything that'll help them.
Henrik Moritzen is a biologist at the University of Oldenburg in Germany. Together with an international team of scientists, he investigated another sense birds can use to help them, which is the Earth's magnetic field. Peter Hoare is a physical chemist on that team at the University of Oxford in the UK.
We know that the magnetic sensors are in the birds' eyes, in their retinas, and the most likely molecule was the protein cryptochrome.
But here's what they didn't know. How does that light-sensitive protein, cryptochrome, actually help the birds sense magnetic fields? To find out, they made some, starting with the genome of a European robin, which is a migratory species.
Basically, we have taken the genetic code from a night migratory songbird, put it into a bacteria cell culture, asked this cell culture to make this protein, and then we send this protein to Oxford.
Moitzen's colleagues in Oxford then shined blue light on those protein samples, which transformed them into magnetically sensitive molecules. As they did that, they exposed the proteins to a magnetic field, which caused two competing chemical reactions to occur.
And we've been able to show that these chemical reactions are affected by quite weak magnetic fields.
In fact, the strength of that magnetic field influences how many of the proteins go down one of those chemical reaction pathways versus the other. Now, what happens next in a bird's eye isn't totally clear, but they think one of those magnetically sensitive reactions produces a form of the protein with a different shape, which might cause it to interact differently with other proteins in the bird's cells. And that, in turn, might trigger a cascade of messaging which would allow the bird to sense the magnetic field.
We also have some indications that it looks like the migratory bird cryptochromes might be more sensitive to magnetic fields than a chicken cryptochrome, for instance, which doesn't migrate.
And that's just one more piece of evidence that the cryptochrome protein might underpin the robin's magnetic sense. The findings appear in the journal Nature. This experiment only tested the proteins outside birds' eyes. Someday, the scientists hope it might be possible to measure this effect inside the animals themselves to get what you might call a truly bird's-eye view. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day IWW leader Frank Little was buried in Butte, Montana. Little had been lynched on August 1st by police agents thought to be working for the despised Anaconda Copper Company. He had arrived in town to help organize 14,000 striking copper miners. Devastated by the deaths of 168 miners in the June fire at Granite Mountain and Spectacular Mines, mine workers formed the Metal Mine Workers Union and walked off the job. Frank Little had previously worked as a hard rock miner and organizer for the Western Federation of Miners. He also took part in the free speech campaigns on the West Coast. Little was involved in early drives to industrially organize oil workers and lumberjacks. He voiced his opposition to the First World War and sought to stop workers from enlisting. When Little arrived in Butte in July, he worked to build strike support, picket lines, and spread the strike to other trades across the city. Early on August 1st, 6 masked men broke into the boarding house where he was staying. He was beaten and taken from his room. His assailants tied him to the bumper of their car and dragged him through the granite streets of Butte to the Milwaukee Bridge, where he was hanged. An ominous note was pinned to his bullet-ridden body with the words that read, "Others take notice. First and last warning." It included the numbers 3, 7, and 77, as well as the initials of other union organizers in the area. As many as 10,000 marched in his funeral procession. Days after his lynching, martial law was declared. Labor radicals were rounded up and charged with espionage. The miners' strike and union were crushed.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs of only in the mid-80s. Fancy that. Though, I must say that we will have sunshine and clouds mixed, with areas of smoke and haze, reducing visibility at times, and winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Mainly clear skies tonight, except for choking smoke and haze, reducing visibility at times. Lows will be in the upper 50s, winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then sunshine and clouds mixed tomorrow with highs in the upper 80s, winds remaining out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to increase by precipitous amounts. Precipitous? Well, we've had, looks like, another 40 or more. We now stand at 132,040. Actually, that's more than 40. That's more than 80 new infections overnight. And we have increased our deceased by 2 and stand now at 160 dead. And they don't want to wear a mask because it impinges upon their freedom to infect us. We have to stop it. Grass pollen is rated as moderate right outside the window here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region, because we are in an active advisory right now for air quality, stands at an unhealthy 118 parts per million. The daytime UV index is very high at 8, so put on the sunscreen that doesn't have all the bad chemicals that will give you cancer. Okay, be careful. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.96 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 81%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 68 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 75 and partly cloudy. Rome is 82 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 83 and fair. Kabul is 83 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 80 degrees with rain. Tokyo is 81 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 55 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and cloudy. And New York, New York is 74 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. staff at Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Russian news outlet Open Media said today it was shutting down after the communications watchdog blocked its website for most users and included it on a list of internet pages engaging in what the watchdog called extremist activity. The news outlet, which was founded by Kremlin critic Mikhail Khodorkovsky, said on its Telegram channel that it had not been informed by the watchdog of a decision to ban the site. Instead, the outlet said it received several letters on yesterday, asking it to remove content from its site that was against the law, without any indication of the content in question. Together with our investor, we've decided to stop our work because the risks are too high for the project team managers, Open Media said in a statement. Unfortunately, the authorities do not need media projects with a critical view on what is going on in the country. The more critical a project is, the shorter its lifespan, but at least we have tried. Communications Watchdog said in an email that access to the outlet's website had been blocked upon demand by the Prosecutor General's office. Numerous investigative media organizations have been outlawed in Russia in recent months as part of a widening crackdown ahead of September's parliamentary election that has targeted media regarded by authorities as hostile and foreign-backed. The authorities last month labeled some journalists from the Open Media outlet, as well as from several other non-state outlets, as foreign agents. And the term carries negative Soviet-era connotations and subjects those designated to extra government scrutiny.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Pedro Fonseca of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Brazilian President Bolsonaro raged against a Supreme Court investigation yesterday, Wednesday, into his conduct and threatened to respond outside the limits of the Constitution, escalating the clash between the far-right leader and the judiciary. Bolsonaro's comments came after Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes approved an investigation into the president's unfounded accusations that Brazil's electronic voting system is vulnerable to fraud. This investigation is not within the bounds of the Constitution, so the antidote to this is also not within the bounds of the Constitution, Bolsonaro said on social media, without specifying further the nature of the threat. Bolsonaro, who is expected to seek a second term in 2022, has repeatedly said Brazil's electronic voting system is vulnerable to fraud without providing evidence. Well, that's another virus that's going around, huh? Critics say Bolsonaro, like former President Donald Trump, is sowing doubts in case he loses in 2022. He has already threatened not to accept the result if the system is not changed, and he won't accept the result if he loses, even if it is changed. Bolsonaro is calling for adoption of printed receipts that can be counted if any election result is disputed, a paper trail that would change the current all-electronic voting system. A proposal to that effect is currently with Congress, with a committee set to vote on it today. Analysts believe it has little chance of becoming law. Bolsonaro has called for people to take to the streets, and last week, thousands of his supporters held demonstrations in several cities backing his proposal. Sounds familiar? I think a paper trail is a good idea, though, but he won't accept any result unless he wins, because that's a familiar refrain that is going around. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.